Welcome to the HRchat podcast, bringing the best of the HR and talent communities to you.
Employee engagement is one of the biggest struggles when it comes to internal communications. While most of us lost the ability to meet in person during the outbreak, new corporate communication technology options have stepped into the void, promising to offer ways to engage workers with key info and announcements without adding to their workload. Welcome to another HR Chat show. I'm your host today, Bill Banham, and this time we're going to be looking at using text messaging to support employee engagement and program rollout efforts. My guest this time is Brandon Daniell, President and Co-Founder at Dialog Health, Inc. Dialog Health is a two-way texting platform that enables information to be pushed and to be pulled from staff, managers, and the HR departments. HR departments use Dialog Health's two-way texting to support enrollment efforts, increase engagement rates of administrative announcements, compliance communications, incident response, and emergency announcements. Brandon, welcome to the HR Chat Show.
Bill, it is such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
So beyond my wee introduction there, Brandon, why don't you take a minute or two and tell our listeners a bit about yourself, your career background, everything before Dialog?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, ended up studying political science and French, and realized I didn't want to be a lawyer, which made my family, I come from a family of physicians, all of them were very happy with that. So I wandered off to New Zealand to see if I could make myself useful down in that beautiful part of the world, and I fell into an organic fair trade food company, which was my first intro in really working with what I would say consumer engagement, engaging people around a product. But while I was living in New Zealand, I was amazed at just how advanced the technology was down there. And when I moved back to the US 8 years later, a bunch of people started asking questions about, did I learn anything really cool about how to engage people and how to get people to do things you wanted them to do? And I always joked and said that I remember I was at a dinner party in Auckland, and I got up to go pay my parking meter, and my colleague said, hold on, just grab your phone and let's pay that meter with a text. And I just was like, wow, that's engagement. So as I got back to the States, I got back into the healthcare field, doing consulting work, business development, basically problem solving. And the word engagement kept coming up time and again. And that led me to start a co-found Dialog Health back in June of 2011 as an engagement company to help enterprises with their audience.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So let's talk a bit about Dialog then. You've made a little suggestion there about what Dialog is all about, but let's get into the nuts and the bolts of it today. So you had that experience where you sent that text message, and that gave you a bit of inspiration there. And I'm guessing there's a little spark that told you that you should start a company. Tell us a bit about the genesis and the mission.
So I had lunch with a physician, and he basically said, hey, I got a problem I'd like to ask your thoughts about how to solve it. And I figured it was just a typical consulting opportunity. And he was chief of staff at a large hospital in Nashville. And he said, look, no one seems to be answering the phone anymore. All of our patients are letting calls go to voicemail. But anytime we look in the waiting room, or anytime I walk into an exam room to meet with a patient, they always have their phone out, and they're always doing something on their phone. And so he asked me, he said, is there any way as an enterprise that we could leverage texting as a communication tool? And of course, that got me excited because I had seen how texting could be used when I was living down in the South Pacific in New Zealand. And, and I had my cell phone in my pocket at the time. So the challenge really intrigued me. So did a little research, thought I might be able to find a solution already in the market. And came back to the gentleman and said, look, I don't see anything that is specifically designed as a two-way texting channel for your industry. I'd be interested in maybe trying to help build one if you'd like to be a client and use it. And over lunch, I suddenly found myself designing or thinking about building and starting a health IT company. And I know nothing about technology, so the challenge was both scary but fun. So brought on some partners who are well versed in the space, and we set out on August 1st, 2011, in a room in California, and we started whiteboarding. What would Dialog Health look like? What would an enterprise two-way texting platform be in an ideal situation? And 10 years later, here we are talking about Dialog Health, and in particular talking about how texting is being applied in the HR space.
Here we are 10 years later, 2021, but back in 2020, just last year, you guys, what about that for a segue, by the way? You guys announced last year that at the HR Tech Conference, I think, you released a multi-select filter for automated texting campaigns. And this feature can be used to support communications and education concerning open enrollment, onboarding new employees, health and wellness offerings, and other initiatives. Examples of filter options include employment status, e.g. full-time or part-time, preferred language, types of insurance held, and the name of the plan provider. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we introduced that multi-select filter as part of our automated campaign tool because we realized that when you're looking at engagement, you go from the whole gamut of, I want to text everybody the same message, i.e. the office is closed tomorrow because of the weather, all the way through to, I just want to text specific sub-targets, subgroups of my population. And so we started talking with clients in the HR space and said, what are some of your challenges that you have? And it came down to examples like, I need to send an update to my part-time employees who work in our Chicago office, who speak Spanish and also happen to have dental insurance as part of their voluntary benefits. So what we realized was if we were able to create a filter to allow for the message to be targeted based on the data requirements, an organization could send a text and have it land at the fingertips on the phone in the pocket or the purse of their employee and have it be just for those people. So that multi-select filter basically just allowed people to be super focused and super targeted when they needed to engage their employees around something, whether it be open enrollment based, whether it be a health and wellness initiative, whether it be a specific update about that location and so forth. So very well received so far by our client base.
Awesome. Okay, so we've spoken already about a specific functionality and a specific release. Let's just pull it back though for a minute. Okay, I want to look at it at a bit of a higher level with you for a moment, and I'm going to challenge you now, Brandon, in 60 seconds or less. And we're going to get into the specific applications for HR in just a mo. I've got some very specific questions around it, but just for the time being, in 60 seconds or less, at a high level, can you share how open the two-way texting platform Open helps HR?
Sure. So communication is mission critical for an enterprise, and what we've found is other channels of communication, email, phone calls, regular mail that's sent with a stamp on it, those are all declining channels of engagement. I know myself, I screen phone calls. I have way too many unread emails. And so our Open platform, which is our HR texting platform, it was designed to enable a company to add two-way texting as a communication asset for their business. I kind of joke at times that, 25, 30 years ago, someone sold in the idea of email, electronic mail. Well, Dialog Health has just taken the same approach and said, look, electronic communication is super efficient, it's easy, it's very useful at a business level. We needed to make sure that texting was an option so that a client or enterprise had all of the relevant forms of communication needed in order to engage their audience.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, let's jump into some specifics. Okay, 3 specific HR issues that Dialog tries to address. In fact, I'd like you. I'm gonna throw one at a time at you, and I'd like you again to take about a minute, maybe less, and tell our listeners a bit about this particular this functionality, this problem that you help try to solve for HR people. Firstly, Dialog claims to help increase enrollment. How on earth is that the case?
Good question. So because, texting is a great way to send someone a reminder to notify them of something. So letting people know when enrollment is starting, letting people know what specific steps they have to do when enrollment is taking place, and letting them know when enrollment is coming to an end. It helps drive them through the process. But importantly, texting is also a great way to steer people to an additional resource. And Bill, what a lot of people don't realize is 98% of mobile phones have access to the internet. So a text is a great way, if you include a link to an enrollment portal or to a website, a text is a great way to put the link to that website at the person's fingertips, and then they can click on it from their phone, go to the portal, actually go do the enrollment from their phone if they want. So, we have actually found that that's a super effective way to drive the enrollment process, because ultimately you're going to have to get people to go somewhere to do the actual enrollment process itself.
Okay, and next I want you to tell me all about how you guys reduce communication costs. We're talking about electronic forms of communication here. Surely we're talking about tiny percentages of a cent compared to the costs of sending emails versus text. Maybe I'm completely misunderstanding how you guys reduce communication costs. Tell me more.
It's a great question. So texting obviously is electronic. It is very cost effective. There is a fraction of a cent for the transaction to occur. But when you think about the open rate, 95% of texts are read within 5 minutes of being sent. It's a very effective channel with high certainty of engagement. When I put a stamp on an envelope, first of all, I've got to create the letter. I have to put it in the envelope. I've got to put the stamp on it. I've got to send it. I don't know if someone's going to read that, and I don't even know if I'm sending it necessarily to the right address. So what we often say is texting a way to improve the engagement, but are there other forms of communication that you no longer need to do? Another good example in HR space could be a lot of companies will print a lot of collateral. Maybe it's something that goes in that envelope, maybe something that goes on the wall. Being able to send a text with a link to the digital version of that exact same collateral reduces an enormous amount of printing cost. And we're all guilty of it. We all get given something, and next thing you know, we don't know where it is, or it's been thrown away. But a text is always sitting on the phone of that person. Unless they delete the text, they can always come back to it. So it's just an effective way to communicate, and if possible, to perhaps cut costs from other less engaging forms of communication.
Did you say that texts have a 95% open rate?
Correct. So
wow.
In the United States, at least, I'm speaking about the U.S. market, 98% of all texts that are sent are eventually read. 95% of them are read within the first 5 minutes of being sent.
Wow, it's hard to argue with those numbers. Okay, so Dialog Health recently released a reporting feature that provides enhanced list management and capability. This permits a user to see who received and did not receive a text, who responded to and did not respond to a text, and how recipients responded, all on a single screen. What would you say to employees, though, who feel that it's okay to communicate with them by email and maybe some forms of social media, such as LinkedIn seems to be an obvious business place, but that the phone or text messages, particularly those text messages that have some sort of tracking capabilities where they can tell that 95% we were just speaking about are actually, Brandon, intrusive? What are the findings or feedback that you have to support texting not only as an effective channel of communication, but also as an accepted by the employees, an accepted one?
That's a really good question. So let me answer that in two parts. So first of all, texting is a channel that as an adult, we all use. I like to say it's our inner circle of communication. It's how we communicate with our family, our loved ones, our best friends, our colleagues, and those select businesses that we invite in to the circle. So, most people know what a dental reminder is from their dentist, or a text about your flight, or a text from your hair salon. So texting is simply mimicking a communication channel that we already are receptive to. The key point with texting from an employee standpoint is I can opt out of receiving the messages. So I received the initial text that activates the channel with my employer. I understand what it's about, and I can choose to turn off the channel at any given time. So the power of the channel resides with its value. And what we have found is because our technology uses just basic SMS, regular text messaging, we're not requiring people to download an app, learn how to use an app, turn on notifications. Texting in and of itself is not a tracking capability. Obviously, the phone itself, there are data points that are being put off by the phone at all times. But texting itself is simply a universal communication channel that is there. And so the way that we build trust is we encourage our clients to focus on the value of the message. Play on the notion of fear of missing out. The beauty of texting in the HR space is you're communicating about things that are important to the employee, their benefits, their safety, their health and well-being, general company updates. And so we have found over the last 10 years that the channel, if respected and not overused, is actually very sticky. The opt-out rate, which is how we measure, the percentage of employees that are still receiving text messages, is predominantly well over the opt-out rate is below 10% for all of our clients. So I like to say that, the channel is, you're in there with my grandmother if you're texting me, right? That's what I always tell people. So respect the channel, make the messages relevant, and don't ask me to download something and change my behavior. Just communicate the way that everybody else in my life communicates with me via the text, and we'll get along just fine. And that's typically what we find with our clients who are engaging their employees.
So I own a phone, Brandon, and it's even a smartphone. Okay. And I also choose to sometimes give people my number. And by doing so, I expect them to send me a text. But sometimes I might get someone who texts me a bit too much and I don't really appreciate their cadence. And I might sort of switch them off a little bit. They might become white noise to me. I'll be less responsive. Can you offer any advice for leaders of HR departments out there in terms of cadence for communication through a channel such as text?
Another great question and an important one. We always like to encourage the client to ask themselves, is this a text that you would want to receive? Remember, the HR department is also their employees. So we go through the filter of, if the message is relevant, then you should send it. If the message is not relevant, then you need to think about, is there another channel I should send this to, right? The other thing we like to say is, a lot of times people say, well, they ask how many messages are too many, and that's the response to that question. And they say, well, how long can a text be? And a text is a traditional short message service of 160 letters and characters. Our system allows someone to send a single message that could be made up of 4 texts. And our comment is always, keep it short, keep it simple, keep it relevant. If you have to send something that may be, 500 characters long in a text, as long as it's relevant, that's fine. And we found that with COVID. COVID was a good example where there was a lot more communication going on with the employees because it was every day seemed to be a new challenge and a new regulation and a new policy. So COVID was actually it was a watershed event for us when it came to employee engagement, because it really demonstrated that we truly do live in a mobile first world, right? And so in a year of uncertainty last year, being able to communicate reassuring messages, updates on procedures and policies with respect to COVID was really a great way to demonstrate the validity of the channel. And in many instances, we found employees telling their employers, can you also text about this, right? Can you add this communication to the channel, because I'm finding this of value to me and it's really useful. So
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now then, we've all heard of Zoom fatigue. One of my other hats is I run events, Brandon, and as you can imagine, it's been a heck of a year, a heck of an education for that side of the business, and moving on to going online, using things like Zoom. But we're all at the point now, I think, where there's a lot of Zoom fatigue going on. Do you have any data or maybe client examples, anecdotes to support suggestions that employees want quick and easy ways to communicate? You mentioned a moment ago, up to 4 text messages over and instead of long drawn out video chats, phone calls, very long emails. Is there more of an appetite from what you've seen, from what you've heard, for faster communication? Just get to the point. There's too many ways that people can reach me online now. In a way, let's keep it straightforward and simple.
Absolutely, and that plays to an important part of our platform. When we talk about texting, we look at it as a conversational tool. It is two-way, and one of the key things we found there is, while we're talking about sending text out to employees, a lot of people don't sit and say, how easy is it for our employees to communicate with us? And the beauty of texting is someone can make a request via a text, without having to email or look up the phone number for HR, right? Someone can also respond. So, for example, maybe, Bill, I'm chasing you up for a document that I need you to sign today. I've emailed it to you. I sent you a text just saying, when you have a second, would you please check your email, and can you get us the document back by the end of the day? You might be in a meeting. You might even, you might be somewhere where you can't make a phone call, you can't do an email, but you can quickly pull out your phone and respond and say, I'll get to the email as soon as I get out of this current meeting. You'll have it by 3 o'clock. So that type of inbound communication, we have a lot of clients that have said that they have found their employees more engaging with respect to requests or immediate responses to important things, because texting makes it simple. They can do it. I mean, we're all guilty of it. I've pulled out a phone and checked it in a meeting. But I would never answer a phone call in a meeting. So.
Well, I suspect that you're allowed to pull out your phone, Brandon, during the meetings because you're the boss. Hey, in under 60 seconds, here's another challenging one for you. In under 60 seconds, can you think about what we've spoken about so far today, as we do look towards wrapping up this interview already, and maybe recap in under 60 seconds why text messaging can enhance employee engagement?
That's a great. So texting is a ubiquitous channel. It is on a device that is with all of us all the time. I don't know about you, but if you said, Brandon, you can lose your keys, your wallet, or your phone, which one would you not want to lose? I would say I don't want to lose my phone, right? It is literally, become such an important part of our daily routine. That being said, if it's important for you to accompany your employees throughout the year on a journey, and whether that be onboarding a new employee, giving them updates about vacation time, wishing them a happy, safe holiday, what I like to say is, remember, you're using a channel that the audience has already adopted in their daily lives. So if you can turn on that channel and leverage it at an enterprise level, then you're making it really easy, because you're saying to the client, your employees, we see how you communicate. We understand the value of making it easy, providing you access to a richer experience. So we would like to respect the channel, and we'd like you to invite us in so that we can better support you as an important team member. So for me, I mean, I like to say, I guess I'll summarize by saying, if you are an employer and you begin to use texting, you are communicating how your employees already communicate, right? You're simply following their lead, and it's easy. There's no learning curve. It's ubiquitous, and it's just an important asset in all of our lives.
Great answer. Definitely over 60 seconds, Brandon. Maybe I should have asked you to do it in 160 characters or less, but great answer nonetheless. Okay, just 2 more questions for you for today. What's coming up what's coming up for you guys? Any new releases in the works and any new initiatives that you want to shout about?
I'm tempted to text you the answer, but instead I'll answer it quickly. So obviously, texting is a way to open up a channel, right? And so once that channel is open, we're now looking at, are there other things that we can help provide that give a richer experience? One of them is surveying employees. Texting is a phenomenal way to survey an employee. Maybe it's a new hire and you're worried about retention. Another thing we're looking at is the ability to augment and support telehealth. The beauty of using texting to include a link with telehealth is that you literally, by clicking on that link in the text, you make the phone the teleconference tool, right? Everybody knows what it's like to FaceTime. So you're simply saying, okay, if I need to do a video chat with you, I'll use the text to set it up, and all I need you to do is click on that, and your browser does the rest, and the camera comes on. So those are two things we're excited about: surveys, and then helping do more video communication that is started by a text message.
Wonderful. And one more question for today, and usually it goes along the lines of, how can our listeners connect with you personally, and also how can they learn more about the business? But in your case, I guess I should add to that. I should say, do you want to share your phone number so everybody can text you? Probably not. So how can people connect with you and learn more about Dialog?
I will share my phone number because I have faith in your audience and not abusing it. My phone number is 615-429-4252. But I really do encourage people to go to our website, www.dialoghealth.com, and that's DIALOG. The reason I say that is we have a blog post on our website. We share our best practice, we share clients' best practice, but we also truly take a look at what's amazing and what's going on out in the industry as a whole, and we share those best practices. So we want people to look at us as a company that has the technology, but more importantly, we have an understanding about how to use technology to get the engagement you want. So at the end of the day, that's a great resource. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions that any of your listeners might have personally. So they're welcome to call me or text me.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that just leaves me to say for today, Brandon, thank you very much for being a guest on this episode of the HR Chat Show.
It has been a real pleasure, Bill. Thank you very much.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thank you for listening to the HR Chat podcast, brought to you by the HR Gazette.